Yo, Club Status got Dollar Lamb Chops today. Come through about 7 o'clock. I'm gonna have them on the grill. Dollar Lamb Chops. We got $5 Hennessy, $5 Grey Goose, $5 mixed drink. We got Slice, the DJ. We doing karaoke. We got Frankie, she's gonna host. So come down, get Dollar Lamb Chops, get free entry, and come hang out at Club Status. You know how we used to do. I'm the first one with it.
You couldn't be hungry around him. No one could be in want. Just had a very genuine, gentleman personality. Just a real Detroiter.
And right now, that's how friends are remembering Detroit restaurant owner Michael Brown, better known as Mike B. He was killed in a triple shooting outside a West Side bar over the weekend.
It's 4:30 in the morning. The city is as quiet as it ever gets. The kind of quiet where the only sounds are distant traffic and the hum of streetlights. Outside a cocktail bar on Schaefer Highway on Detroit's west side, 3 men have just been shot. 2 are found crumpled in front of Suite 100 Lounge. The third he's across the street, alone, on the cold pavement of a city he spent his entire life building up. And here's the thing that will stay with you. That man across the street wasn't some random face. He was Mike B. Michael Mikey Brown, 52 years old, father, husband, the guy who fed Detroit lamb chops for $2 when he could have charged 20. The man who turned empty buildings into full rooms, full of music, full of laughter, full of Black Detroit showing up for itself. He wasn't supposed to end up on that pavement. Not like that. Not there. But he did. And right now nobody knows who put him there. Investigators arrived to find multiple shell casings scattered across the scene. 3 victims, 1 location, the middle of the night. And when the dust settled, Mike B. was the only one who didn't make it. The 2 other victims survived. Their identities still have not been released. The circumstances that led to the shooting, still unclear. No suspects, no arrest, no description of who pulled the trigger. Just questions. And a community that woke up Saturday morning to news that left them speechless. This is a case that is still unfolding. The investigation is live. And tonight we're going to walk through everything we know, and ask the questions that nobody seems to be asking out loud yet. But before we go any further, if you're here watching this, it means you care about real stories, real people, real justice. Cases like Mike B. S matter to you. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to 3 AM Files and click that bell so you never miss a case. These stories only reach the people who need to hear them when you help us push them out. This one matters. Don't let it get buried. Let's go back to the beginning, because to understand what happened that night, you need to understand who Mike B. was. And once you do, this whole thing hits completely different. Mike Brown didn't come from a world of restaurants and press features. He came up through the streets of Detroit the way a lot of men in that city did. Grinding, hustling, building something out of nothing. He started as a party promoter. He threw events. He had an eye for talent, an ear for what a room needed to feel alive, and a personality that made people feel like they belonged wherever he was. That's a rare thing. And Detroit noticed. Before there was sloppy chops, before the tomahawk steaks and the lamb chop specials that had people lined up around the block, there was Club Status on 8 Mile and Telegraph. And before that, Dynasty Lounge. Mike Brown ran both. And the way people remember those clubs tells you everything about who he was as a man. Former employees said he had a habit of giving chances to people who didn't have many options. One man wrote on Facebook after Mike's death, "I was lost on how to get some money when I left the streets alone. You allowed me to throw parties at Status and showed me legal money to spend the same." That one line. Read it again. Because that's not a club owner talking, that's a mentor. That's someone who understood what it meant to be at a crossroads and used his platform to point people in a different direction. Hip-hop artists remembered him for his weekly showcases. Us hip-hop heads was there for Murda the Mike night faithfully every week, said one artist. Mike B. was a bridge. Between the streets and the stage. Between the underground and the mainstream. Between what Detroit was and what it could become. And then in 2020, right in the middle of a pandemic that was shutting everything down, Mike Brown opened a restaurant, Loppy Chops, on West McNichols, just off the large freeway. In steaks, ribs, tomahawks, the kind of cuts that belonged downtown, planted firmly in the neighborhood. But the move that made people stop and pay attention. The $2 lamb chop specials. In Detroit, lamb chops aren't just food. They're culture. They're tied to Sunday dinners and family gatherings and the kind of meals that hold memories. Mike knew that. He made fine dining feel like home. A year later, he opened Sloppy Crab on East Jefferson, right by the Renaissance Center. Celebrities started dropping in. The atmosphere was electric. Cover charges, heavy cocktails, that same nightclub DNA Mike had been perfecting for decades, now wrapped around a seafood menu. He made Black Detroit visible downtown at a time when a lot of people were asking, who is all this development actually for? He knew the answer, and he built his answer in brick and mortar. A journalist from Food and Wine magazine once said she had to call him more than 20 times to get him to sit down for an interview. And when she finally got him in a chair, here's what he said. The fact that we are black men, my partners and I, competing against some of the biggest seafood and steak houses means something. It pushes us to work harder. That's who was lying across the street from Suite 100 Lounge at 4:30 in the morning on February 28. So what was he doing there? That's the question nobody has answered yet. And the more you sit with it, the more uncomfortable it gets.
You know, I can tell you that I did speak with a few people, but there were messages upon messages online pouring out of love and memories and thank yous of Michael Brown, who owns Sloppy Chops behind me. They're getting the message of his death rocking the community all throughout Detroit. Let's take a good look at him because he is beloved and missed by so many. This is Michael Brown, also known as Mike B. That's what many people called him, both in his restaurants and outside the restaurants. He was known for Sloppy Chops and Sloppy Crab. Those were his establishments, his places, and many say that the food was good, but it was his heart. That's what stood out the most. Detroit police say 3 people were shot at 4:30 in the morning on Saturday on Pilgrim Street and Schaefer Highway. Mike B, again, as many people called him, died of his injuries. Messages, as I said, have been pouring in since it all happened, saying he was a great father, great husband, and overall mountain of a man.
Very well loved, respected. He was an asset to our community. He fed us good. He even went past food to do community service and to help community organizations and people. No one could be hungry around him, could be in need around him.
He stood up and supported the community, specifically around hunger. He always did things to make sure that people had food, that he would say that there's no young person that's going to be hungry as long as I'm around. So he would do things. And then I remember either it was last year or the year before last that there was a tragic thing that happened at one of his restaurants, and he was just there 10 toes down for that person and that family and that community.
Here's where things get strange. And I want you to sit with this carefully, because we're dealing with an open investigation, and what I'm about to lay out are facts, observations, and questions. Not conclusions. Not accusations. Just the things that don't quite add up. Suite 100 is a cocktail lounge on Schaefer Highway. It's not one of Mike's spots. He had his own restaurants, his own venues, his own world. So what brought him to a bar on the west side at 4:30 in the morning? Was he there to network? Was it a social visit with friends? Was he meeting someone specific? Nobody has said. And the silence around that question is louder than anything else in this case. Then there's the scene itself. 3 people shot. That's not a stray bullet, and it's not a random act. That's a spray. That's someone who showed up with intent, or who reacted to something with extreme, sudden violence. The kind of thing that doesn't erupt from nothing. Something happened inside that bar, or just outside it, that escalated fast. And whatever it was, Detroit police had not confirmed by press time whether the shooting happened inside the venue or outside it. That's a critical detail. Because the answer to that question tells you a lot about whether this was a targeted act or chaos that spilled out of a crowd. And then there's this. Mike was found across the street. The other 2 victims were found in front of the bar. Across the street. Think about that geography for a moment. How does the only fatality end up the furthest from the front door? Did he try to run? Was he separated from the others when shots rang out? Or was he specifically followed, chased, targeted in a way the other two weren't? Investigators found multiple shell casings at the scene. Multiple. That means multiple shots were fired. This wasn't someone who fired once and fled. Whoever did this kept shooting. Detroit's homicide unit had also been dealing with a pattern in the weeks before Mike's death. Earlier that same month, a separate late-night confrontation outside another West Side bar ended in both a shooting and a stabbing. One person dead, another critically injured. Detroit's after-hours venues had become pressure cookers. And community leaders had already been calling for stricter controls on bars operating in the early morning hours. A conversation that Mike's death reignited with full force. Was Mike B. in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or was there something specific about that night, that bar, those people, that moment, that someone wanted to ensure he wouldn't walk away from? We don't know. And that's not a comfortable place to sit. What we do know is that as of this recording, there are no suspects. No description. Loyalists. A man who spent decades making Detroit better, gone. And somewhere out there, the person or people responsible are still walking free. Here is what haunts me most about this case. In 2020, Mike Brown lost a close friend. And in the grief of that moment, he posted something on social media that, in light of everything that's happened, reads like something else entirely now. Life is short and time is something we can't get back, he wrote. Love your family and friends now. Even when you're busy, make time to check in on your family and friends. He knew how fragile it all was. He'd seen it up close. And still, he kept building. Kept showing up. Kept investing in a city that he genuinely loved. Over 1,000 comments flooded his Instagram after his death. People who ate at his tables. People who got their first break at his clubs. People who saw themselves in what he built. His executive chef and partner, Chef Max Lay, a man Mike called his brother, now has to figure out what comes next for a brand they built together from nothing. And the restaurants. As of now, no official announcement has been made about the future of Sloppy Chops or Crab Sports Bar. No transfer of ownership has been confirmed. The family, the partners, the staff, all left in limbo, grieving, while a case with no suspects sits on someone's desk at the Detroit Police Department Homicide Unit. That's where we are. So let me ask you something directly, and I want you to think about this carefully, because the answer matters. When a man spends decades building legal, thriving, community-rooted businesses from the ground up, and then ends up shot dead outside a bar he didn't even own at 4:30 in the morning, what does that tell you about the environment that still exists around late-night entertainment in this city? Is this a story about one man's tragic end? Or is it a story about a system that failed to protect people like him? People who chose to build instead of destroy, and still got destroyed anyway? And here's the deeper psychological question. Why do we so often lose the builders? The ones who created spaces where people felt safe and seen. Why are they the ones who end up on cold pavement? Is it visibility? Is success itself a target in certain environments? Or is there something about the specific world of late-night entertainment, where money, status, and old loyalties all collide in the dark, that makes even the best men vulnerable? Mike B. had plans to expand the Sloppy brand to Atlanta, Houston, and Miami. He was 52 years old and just hitting his stride. His story was supposed to keep going. Somebody made sure it didn't. If you have any information about the shooting outside Suite 100 Lounge on February 28, 2026, please contact Detroit Police Department's Homicide Unit at 313-596-2260 or call Crime Stoppers anonymously at 1-800-SPEAK-UP. Do not stay silent. Mike's family deserves answers. Detroit deserves answers. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think is behind this? What do you think happened inside that bar? And do you think Detroit's after-hours scene needs to change before we lose another Mike B? Subscribe to 3 AM Files. Ring that bell. Because these are the stories that matter, and the only way they stay alive is if we keep telling them together.